Well, welcome everyone to 1251 EDN for week 9. So we've had our holidays now and we're getting back into things. And this week we're talking about ICT leadership in schools and how to become one of the leaders in the use of ICT in your particular educational context. And I have with us so far Christiana, and hopefully we'll have a few more people join us in a moment. And if you are watching and you haven't received an invitation, please post a message in the Q&A and I'll invite you in. So Christiana, have you had a chance to have a look at the readings and the video clips for this week?
The videos, yeah.
So what do you think about being a leader in a school?
I think it could be difficult if you didn't have the correct support mechanisms in place. But I'm really not sure. I've never really seen it too much in schools because of when I was in school, technology wasn't really, it was only just starting to come in. So, yeah.
So when you were in school, did they have a person in charge of, say, the audiovisual part of the school, or the?
I think so, but I think it was just used mainly for the performing arts when they did like stage productions. Like it wasn't so much in the classroom as it would be now. Yeah.
Absolutely, and yes, you are right. It's a fairly new area, but a lot of schools now have employed teachers as ICT coordinators, and it is an area where if you've got those sort of particular skills and interests, there are employment opportunities, particularly if you want to go into a leadership role fairly quickly. It's one of the few areas where you can sort of achieve that, even as a beginning teacher. So how about that little video clip I started things off with?
With the children?
Yes. What did you think about that?
I can't remember that one.
Okay. That was a group of students in a school in New York City, or New York, and they were challenging beginning teachers, or teachers in general, to address their needs as learners. So how have you found it yourself? Have you found your teachers and your academics here at university challenging you in your use of technology? Are you using it in a way that you are finding?
Well, some of our courses allow us, like the diversity, to use a lot of different things in our assessment tasks, and some of us actually use the Google Hangouts for one of our assignments, which was quite good. Yeah, we use it to also talk to each other instead of getting together to meet. We'd have our meetings online, and yeah, then we also just did a live YouTube feed like we're doing now for our assignment. Yeah.
That's great. And did the lecturer for that course assist you with that, or was that because of what you'd done in this course?
It was through what we'd done in this course. There was not really any assistance from the other side. Yeah.
Well, that's still a good thing.
Yeah, and we had some people that weren't in this course as well, so we were also teaching them how to use it as well. So, yeah, it was good.
Oh, see, you're becoming an ICT leader already. Now we've got Cara online, and she mentions that her ICT teacher was in charge of all the tech support at her old school. Yes, that does happen a lot, or did happen a lot in schools, where if you were the ICT teacher, you often got the job of also looking after all the computers in the school. That's happening less and less now. It used to also happen with science teachers. If you didn't have a lab technician, often you had to do all the lab technician roles. But as our use of science in schools has sort of evolved, most schools now have a lab technician that manage all of those processes, particularly around the health and safety issues. But there are still some schools where they don't have that, and the science teacher has to manage all those processes. And that can be fairly harrowing. So what about some other thoughts about expectations on teachers to use technology in schools? Now, through this course, we've been looking at a lot of ICTs, but when you were at school, was there that general expectation that, or when you did your degree and so forth, has there been that expectation that there'll be a lot of technology used in your education?
Through another course that I did, I was originally in biomed, and there wasn't really much of a call for technology at all through there, so I'm not really sure. Yeah.
What about through your own personal use of technology, like social media or other uses of technology? Have you found, or do you have an expectation that your learning will also include those tools or technologies?
I don't know.
Or do you ever use social media to discuss your assignments with each other? And
yeah, we do that, but a lot of the time it also ends up not so much the learning side. It's a lot more just, again, the social media, the social side of it. Like, it turns into the social side, even though you want it to not. So it's a bit hard to kind of balance the two.
Yes, that can be a challenge, and particularly when the courses themselves aren't necessarily using that framework and it's being left to students to manage themselves. Often then it does devolve into more social based, because you're not having that sort of structure being imposed on you by the courses to try to implement that communication. And it's an area that a lot of courses and universities and schools are struggling with, particularly schools. Of course, we know now, well, some of us know that most students work collaboratively on homework. They're always on Facebook as they do their maths assignments or their maths homework, etc. But that's not really recognised in our classrooms or by teachers in terms of when they're setting those tasks. There still is the assumption that students will all work alone in their bedrooms with their textbooks, doing these activities without access to the internet and without access to their friends and so forth. But how do you think, knowing that students will be using those sort of communication tools, how might that change the way you go about setting homework or teaching or giving assignments?
Well, if you know that people are using the social media, it's easier to give, like, say, a group assignment, I think, because they can, well, they're already collaborating on their own piece of assessment, so it's not that much to go to the next step and say, well, this group assignment and that sort of thing.
Now, that's a good approach, because that then acknowledges that it's happening and you're building that process into the structure of the assessment.
Yeah, and you don't really want to ignore it either, because it's not like it's going away or anything like that.
Absolutely. Now, Greta online made a comment, my school never seemed to want to incorporate ICT. However, my sister's grade, they are integrating a lot more of ICT and computers, and assessment using ICT is very popular. Absolutely, Greta, and we're really only seeing the massive change in the use of ICT in schools over the last couple of years, as we've had access to the technologies, and teachers' expectations have now risen to where it's expected that teachers will engage with ICT in a very dynamic and engaging way. Cara also mentions that we have she has a Facebook group for our course to communicate with each other and to meet up for questions and answers. Absolutely, Cara. And there's always an interesting tension as to whether or not teachers, or in this case universities and so forth, should set those up, or to allow students to evolve them naturally. There's a lot of advantages in having students do it themselves. Of course, then you have greater ownership of it, and you're actually more freer to communicate through those channels. The disadvantage is, though, that sometimes some students might be left out of those groups, or not all students.
They might not know the people. Yeah.
So there's a bit of a balancing act going on there, and we do have tools such as our discussion forums and so forth in Learning at Griffith, but they're very clunky and hard to use compared to most social media tools.
Yeah, this course I think is the only one that's actually full on using the discussion board. You post something in the other ones and nobody answers, or there's hardly any posts anyway, so nobody checks it. I don't think they're really aware that it's there.
Yes, it's a hard thing, and the tool itself doesn't help either.
No.
In the past, I've used like Google Groups and other much more easy to use Facebook type environments. This time I decided just to go back to the discussion forums because we had so many other online tools. I didn't want to give you too many to engage with in one course. But yeah, the Blackboard discussion forum is very hard to use properly, but it does at least allow some communication.
Yeah.
Greta also mentions it could be tricky using social media within schools in regards to parent views. Absolutely, Greta, and not just parents, but also teachers and particularly principals or school systems who are very fearful of adverse publicity around the use of social media. But the recognition is that students are using social media now almost continuously. And likewise, parents and even teachers are using social media. So while previously we've sort of tried to restrict access in schools, more and more there's acknowledgement that it's happening anyhow, so we may as well learn how to use it properly, even though there are risks associated with that, and we need to manage those risks. But just banning it or not using it is probably not the way to go. And I see we have Jason joining us. Welcome. So, any other aspects of the readings for this week? So the other things, I gave you some video clips to have a look at, so I knew you were probably focusing on other things and didn't want to have a whole lot of readings to do this week. But I gave some examples of ICT leadership being shown in schools. I gave you a primary school video where we had the ICT coordinator, but then a whole lot of AITSL, it's the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, but they've done up a lot of example videos of what best practice is in relation to the use of ICT in schools. So has anyone had a chance to have a look at any of those video clips about that best practice and what you might have thought about those?
Were they the ones that had the links?
Yes.
Down the side? Yeah, I couldn't load those. I don't know what was wrong with my internet last night, but it wasn't working very well for me. It took me a few goes just to get the child one up, so...
Okay, well, maybe at some time you can have a look at those, but they're really just little 2 or 3 minute videos of teachers in Australian schools that have been selected as showing best practice around the learning standards for teachers. Now you may be aware that there's a whole set of standards that you have to meet as a beginning teacher or as a graduate. Then there's ones for accomplished and then highly accomplished teachers. And AITSL have done up a whole lot of videos to go with those standards to try to explain the standards in a more contextualized way so that you can sort of see examples of how teachers are meeting those standards. Now these are standards that you will be judged against. You're being judged against them in courses here at uni where we're using the graduate standards and we're building those into all of our university courses. But also when you get out into schools, you'll be judged against the standards for teachers at proficient and highly accomplished levels. So they'll often be part of your performance reviews, and certainly if you're going for promotions and awards and also leading teacher accreditation, etc., you'll need to demonstrate how you've met those standards. Now, Greta mentions that she likes the way the readings were this week. It was great to see the way ICT is used in schools. I especially liked the history class where they were able to make social media account on their research, or their researcher who they were investigating. Yes, so that's was one of the exemplar videos where students created what's known as a sort of a fake Facebook account for a particular person that they're doing an investigation on. So say if they were investigating Julius Caesar, they would create a a Facebook account for Julius Caesar and populated it with sort of people he was talking to and information about him, and try to actually develop up a persona for that historical figure, as we would have for personas that we have for ourselves. So it achieves two things. One, it teaches them more about social media and about the profiles we have about ourselves on social media, but also, in this case, looking at history, the things that we know about historical figures. So the final thing I included was the idea about competitions and awards. One of the easiest and most effective ways of improving your profile within your school as a teacher is to have your students engage with various competitions and things of that nature, whereby they can showcase how well they've done, but also it then showcases how well you are going as a teacher, where you can say you've had your students achieving these awards or these competitions and so forth. But there are also a whole lot of awards that you can go for as a teacher. And the really big hidden secret about those is that very few teachers go for awards. In fact, we struggle to actually find teachers to apply for many of our awards that we give out in education. So even as a beginning teacher, you could be applying for various awards, and as long as you're doing something a bit innovative and different, you can often be recognized for that, and sometimes very effectively recognized. Now, it does take a little bit of time to prepare your submissions for awards, and that often puts teachers off because you will be time poor as a teacher. But as a way of building up your professional profile, and particularly if you're on contract or just starting out as a teacher, and you need to develop that profile so that you get more employment, it can be a very useful activity to engage with. And it's nowhere near as hard as most teachers think it might be. Have you had any experiences with awards or competitions that students might go in schools?
The Griffith Uni Science and Engineering competition. That
Yep.
one's I've been in that one, and that was was good. It was a different sort of competition to what I'd been in before.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
getting your students involved in those sort of competitions is a great way of helping both their learning, but also helping you as a teacher, because you also get to see what other schools and students are doing, and
Yeah.
comparing how your students are going against other students can boost or at least give you ideas of how you can improve. Now, particularly as high school teachers, you've also got opportunities to get involved in the review and moderation process done by the Queensland Studies Authority. Now, is anyone aware of what's involved with the Queensland Studies Authority when they review and moderate senior work? Okay.
Is that when they send off like sampler works from the student and they like cross mark it sort of against all the other schools and make sure everyone's marking to the same standard?
Yep, and that's what's done. But one of the very best ways of getting professional development as a teacher is to be involved in that process. Now, each subject has a panel of around about a dozen teachers in each region. So for the Gold Coast region, there's a panel. So there'd be one for each of the sciences. There'd be one for IPT and one for ITS. And you can get involved in that panel. I think normally you have to be at least 2 years out in your teaching, but getting involved in that panel can be a really great way, because you're having to make judgments on how other teachers have done their teaching in terms of their assessment tasks and so forth, and how their students have been doing those assessment tasks. And it can be a fantastic way of improving your own assessment and ideas for your own teaching, is to be involved in that. And it's also just talking with those other panel members. You get a lot of really good ideas and a lot of feedback on your own work, etc. So it's one of the best ways of getting professional development as a teacher is to get involved in one of the QSA panels. Jason's having a few troubles with his microphone. You don't seem to be muted, Jason. There is a little tool in the settings button at the top of your screen, looks like a little gear. You can click on that and it will take you through a process to try to improve your microphone. Other than that, you can put your questions in and I can try and assist. But we do have a couple other questions from those watching online. One from, I think you're working again, Jason. Yeah?
Oh, there it is. Hey, hello. We're here.
Hi.
So I might just answer a few questions from online and then we'll go back to Jason.
No worries.
So Greta says, is that always effective? What happens when students aren't able to understand the content that they are supposed to learn at home? I imagine it would be very hard to learn maths by yourself at home. Okay, you're talking about the flipped classroom pedagogy. Now, the flipped classroom approach has been very popular in schools at the moment. The idea of that is a little bit like this course, how it's being run, where you're provided with a video clip and some readings to do, and then we have a discussion about those readings. Now this is being done in schools a lot as well, where teachers are recording little video clips and giving students work to do at home, and then class time is spent discussing that work and going through individually with students how they, or collectively, how they, the problems that they had with those readings or the videos that they saw. So the key thing is, instead of doing a lecture type presentation in class, you record that and you have students view that at home. And the homework that they would normally set, you do at school, where you can actually support them through that process. So it is a challenge. It does rely upon students being self-directed and self-motivated. Just as with this course, we rely upon you doing the readings and watching the video clips so that we can have a robust discussion about those. And if that doesn't happen, the system does break down. So Greta, you are correct in that respect. There are some challenges with the flipped classroom approach, but it has shown to be very effective if you've got your students working in that way. Of course, you can spend a lot more of your time then addressing students' particular learning needs rather than just presenting information, which can be done more effectively through video. Now, Greta also asks us, she comments that she had quite a few teachers from her school that were on panel. Absolutely. Every school normally has a few teachers on panel, and the leading schools will have what's called panel chairs, where you'll actually be a leader of those panels. I was a panel chair for subjects I was involved in, and then you also get a chance then to work with other panel chairs from across the state, and you see then how what's the best practice happening across the entire state in the various subject areas. And that then gets passed back down to the panel members on your panel, and then through the comments that are sent back to teachers on the moderation of the work that they send through, the ideas are then passed out to all the teachers of that subject in that particular region. Now, Cara also makes a comment. She thinks that competitions and I think competitions and rewarding with awards is a great idea. This gives students and teachers opportunities to succeed and aim for better teaching. Absolutely, Cara. The whole point is to try to get you out of your own sort of thought bubbles where, as teachers, you're often going to be very isolated. Now, if you're teaching science, normally it's okay, a bit better, because there'll often be more than one science teacher in a school. And likewise, if you're teaching mathematics, there'll often be more than one maths teacher. But if you're doing like the senior maths, or say Maths C, I think it's still called Maths C, or say physics, or one of the areas where you'll be the only teacher of that subject in the school, then your opportunities to actually get ideas and share ideas and improve your teaching can be very restricted. Now, professional associations are one way of doing that, but other ways are getting involved in competitions or with panels and so forth, whereby you can actually see how other teachers are working and can engage more effectively in that way. I know a teacher at the moment, she's actually working in another school where she's what's called mirroring or mentoring, whereby you actually go to another school and you work there for a couple of weeks just to see how other schools and other teachers in other schools approach teaching your subject. Because unfortunately, as a beginning teacher, you're not going to get a lot of experiences in other ways of teaching your subject than what you've got access to within your own internal school. Now, on track, it's a little bit better here at university. Of course, you'll often get a chance to see a number of different schools and see how the teachers in those schools approach teaching your subject area. But if you go off to a school, particularly if you're in a remote school or a rural school, you may be the only teacher even in your district, and your opportunities to get that experiences will be limited. So Jason, now that you're back with us, do you have any comments about the videos that we've been discussing?
Even just going back to the moderation process.
Yep.
From what I remember back in school, is that each teachers would sort of mark different assignments as well, or different tests, like to check how valid it is, sort of thing.
Absolutely, particularly in subjects where you've got a lot of classes, say mathematics or
English sort of thing, yeah.
Or English, yes. Having that cross-moderation process before it goes out to external moderation, because that's what the QSA process is called. It's external moderation, where you've got moderation occurring by others outside of your school. But internal moderation processes are also very important, and that's one of the advantages of large subjects, whereby you can achieve that. That small subjects like the very senior mathematics and some of the sciences, you won't have that opportunity because you might be the only class for that subject. And that's where you have to rely upon external moderation even more to get feedback on how you're going.
The Math C class in our school had like 8 students in it. So
yeah, same.
Yeah.
And that's very common. And that's what it's designed for. It's designed for the exceptional students in that respect. And but the challenge there is that as a teacher, you don't want to just be relying upon your own understanding of the subject. Particularly as a beginning teacher, you want to get ideas from other teachers and how other schools are going. And unfortunately, that's very hard to do unless you're part of some of these external processes. But we're really meant to be talking about ICT here. How about your use of ICT in your subjects? So with those subjects that you've had some experience with and you want to focus as your careers in, how about showing leadership around ICT use in those subjects? Have you got any ideas of how you could bring in really good uses of technology to improve your teaching and your students' learning of those subject areas?
Even using the Google Plus has been good. Like how we can all join up here and discuss things. That's a great sort of technique.
Absolutely. So if you've got a small group of students, say if you've got 8 Math C students, even setting up a Google Hangout whereby you as a teacher might come in when they're doing their homework and be able to assist them if you want to do that level of support. But even if the students are facilitated in doing that themselves, you can use these collaborative tools to enable that to happen more effectively. But don't forget also, you can bring in experts, and that's another thing that a lot of teachers don't avail themselves of. The ability to bring in outside experts into your classroom through these new technologies is a great way of improving not only your teaching, but obviously your students' learning. Now the CSIRO have been doing a big program of scientist mentoring, whereby they'll pair up a scientist with a teacher and they'll provide that process of support so that the scientist helps the teacher engage with ideas about how they can improve their teaching. And they're just starting to do it with mathematics and with computing now as well. So you can get in contact. There's a website on the CSIRO site whereby you can sign up for that mentorship program, and they'll then fly the mentor out, or they'll use video conferencing and tools like that. And they do it especially one-on-one, but it can be a great way of giving you better ideas on how to do your teaching. Now, at the moment, they don't do it for pre-service teachers, because there's just too many of you and it would be not really their focus. But when you get out into schools, it can be another great way of improving what you do by getting involved in that mentoring. But there's other things like the CSIRO Crest Awards. Has anyone been involved in those Crest Awards?
Heard of them. Our school likes to put through nominations every year for it. So.
Yep. Well, they're a little bit like the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme, where you've got 3 levels: silver, or bronze, silver, and gold. But the Crest Awards, you can have all of your students sign up for, and you can actually even incorporate it in as part of your coursework, them achieving those, particularly the lower levels, the bronze awards. And you can build it, say if you're doing an assignment in science, whereby the students can come up with an idea and develop up a science project around that. You can then build the Crest Awards into that so that they achieve that.
That's exactly what our school has done. So one of their assessment pieces actually gets put into the competition. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great way of doing it, and it helps then students like achieving those sort of awards, and they get a nice little award from it all, and they've even got it for primary schools now. The silver and gold ones, they really have to work independently, but you can certainly still facilitate that as a science teacher. Then there's also the maths and science quizzes, or the tests that happen, and many schools sign up for that. But that's sort of a little bit different.
The University of New South Wales do one, science and math, and I think they have a computer one as well now.
They do. And there's also the residential programs that you can get your students to go off and do, where they go off for a week on a science school, science summer school, or the maths, or even the computing ones now as well. Now, Greta mentions that at the PD day she attended for this course, some of the teachers expressed their concerns about how they want to incorporate ICT into schools, but the privacy systems and internet blocking prevented them from doing so. How do we avoid this? That's a very good question, Greta, and it's a problem at the moment because there are still a number of restrictions placed upon the technologies we can use in schools. There are ways around it, though. One is for the teacher to showcase the use of those if their machine is unblocked. You can showcase how to do those technologies, and students can access them at home when they're not blocked and engage with it in that way. Some teachers even use their own mobile phones at school to get access to the internet around blockages and things of that nature. You can ask your students, because often they'll know ways around certain filter blocks through using proxy servers and stuff like that. But that's sort of more the nefarious ways. Pardon, sorry?
They're very crafty, especially if they want to play a game.
Absolutely. So often there are ways around those restrictions, but sometimes the restrictions are there for good reasons. There are certain sites we don't want students looking at. But sometimes it just takes a bit of tenacity and going to the people that have blocked it and requesting it to be unblocked and giving a good reason for that. And if you can generally provide a good educational reason, there are mechanisms to have those things unblocked. That does take a bit of work, and it is a pain and frustrating, particularly if you want to access a lot of sites, and even more if you want to allow students to have that more dynamic accessing of sites that they've identified that they want to get access to. But at the moment, we do have to work within those limitations. Of course, they exist for particular reasons. But over time, you'll find that those restrictions go away. I still have a copy of an email sent out to every teacher in New South Wales banning the use of email in school because it was seen as a very, very problematic communication mechanism and shouldn't be allowed to occur in schools. So any new technology has a level of fear associated with it. But over time, it becomes understood how those technologies can be used safely and effectively, and they become available to use in schools. Now, Cara also makes a comment. For our group assignment for learner diversity, she made the primary school teachers in her group use Google Drive, where she gave them the link for our PowerPoint, and they could all edit it, and she was the leader of the group. Absolutely. Shared document work and shared collaborative work on assignments is a fantastic new tool that we've got access to in schools and here at university, where all the students can be working on the same document and all the same PowerPoint document, all the same spreadsheets and things like that. So they can all be entering data into a spreadsheet where you can have all the students doing a science experiment and all contributing to the same spreadsheet. Can be a really great way of collecting lots of scientific data really quickly and easily. or mathematics data, and things of that nature. So having those collaborative tools really does make things much more efficient and effective.
I know another group actually used the Google Sites for their assignment in the same one that Kara's talking about. Yeah.
And that's another great way of publishing, and a little bit more persistent and a bit more structured, where you can create your own websites and then have that. But just the ease of being able to do that and allowing students to do that in a dynamic way is very powerful as well, as you're finding, as you're mentioning in that course. But think about doing that for your own students. So instead of actually creating a website for your class and having all these students contribute to that, letting them all create their own websites. Or if they're doing a science experiment, create a website just for that science experiment and put all the information around that. So it's just a way of thinking about being able to do websites in a much more dynamic way. Now that they're very easy to create, and students should have the skills to be able to do them in interesting ways. Okay, so how about your assessment? Now, I'm getting a little concerned that there's not an awful lot of assessment being completed yet, particularly for assignment 1. At this stage of the course, normally I'd be seeing a bit more of that having been completed by now. So I'd really encourage you to start getting that assignment 1 out of the way. Most of the activities for assignment 1 are fairly trivial and easy to do. And you don't want to have them impinge upon when you want to get assignment 2 done. Because assignment 2 does take a few weeks, and if you leave it too late, you won't have time to do it at a level that you should be aiming for. So I'd really encourage you to get assignment 1 out of the way, and I'm about to start marking those that have done assignment 1. So you'll be able to see your progress, and it's really good when you've almost got 50% of the marks for a course halfway through, and so you know you've already passed the course and you're just then working on improving and getting better grades, rather than sort of waiting on and being unsure whether or not what sort of grades you're sort of working at. Assignment 1 is really about making sure you've got the base level to pass the course. Assignment 2 is what I really use to work out who's going to get the higher grades in the course. So you really want to make sure you've got time to put into assignment 2. There's really no excuse for not passing the course, because as long as you've done assignment 1 and you've made a reasonable stab at assignment 2, you're bound to get at least 50% of the marks. But it's getting those higher grades that can be more challenging, particularly if you leave things too late for assignment 2. Now, one advantage you guys have had is that you've already done one-third of your assignment 2. So, because you're in first year, we had to give you a task to do in week 3. So you're a little bit lucky that you've got that out of the way. But that was probably one of the easiest aspects of assignment 2. The other ones I do have to be a bit tougher on in order to differentiate the higher grades. Because unfortunately, the university frowns upon you all achieving high distinctions. Even though I keep explaining to them that it shows good teaching that you've all been able to achieve high distinction, they get a bit concerned when everyone achieves that. So, as much as I'd like to, you won't all be achieving at that level. Theoretically, it is possible. I'd have to see exceptional work from everyone to be able to get that passed through, because we do have a moderation process for courses here at university. And if academics are being too easy or too hard with our marking, that is picked up, and they will then change everyone's grades. So just as what can happen in schools, where if a school or if a teacher is too generous with the marking, all students in that class or that cohort can have their grades adjusted and moved up or down. So too it can happen here at university. So do we have some questions about your assessment? Has anyone completed all the quizzes yet?
Yeah. Yep.
Good. How about the completion task, the rest of assignment 1?
I have 1 to go.
Good. So I'd encourage you all to get those out of the way, and then we can start really talking about the assignment 2 ones here in these discussion forums, because I want to make sure you're all able to do well in that task. Those 2 tasks that are remaining. They're not exceptionally hard, but they do involve more work than what you would have done for your assignment 1 ones. Has anyone thought about which of the tasks they're going to do for assignment 2?
Yes, I've highlighted them somewhere.
So there were things like creating an animated story or claymation, like, a computer game, a camp on a disc for a robotics program, a virtual world, a machinima tour of a virtual world.
Educational app.
Yep, an educational app, a QR code activity, augmented reality-based activity, a Minecraft or Portal activity.
A video tutorial.
Yep, a video tutorial or a digital book. Setting up your own learning management system or your own MOOC. And there's a few essay-based ones as well. Doing an argument for or against one-to-one computing or BYOD computing. Doing an analysis of student data using the NAPLAN data results. Creating an online test. Writing a journal article. Doing an analysis of a summer series. Doing a TPAC analysis. Or a professional development presentation. Now, the professional development presentation actually has passed, so if you were going to do that one, we've actually gone past that date, so unfortunately you can't do that one anymore. But there's plenty of other options there for you to choose from. Now, Greta asks us the question, do we upload them separately or all together? What you're going to do is you'll create them as Google Docs, and you'll then upload, or you'll provide the links to those, or some of them include a video, so Google Video. You do them separately. So when you go to the assessment section, you'll see the 3 assessment items for assignment 2. You've done one already for your portfolio, and there'll be the other 2 that you put in. You put one into one option and one into the other option. Very similar to what you've been doing for assignment 1. So I'd encourage you all to start looking at those activities and thinking through how you're going to do them so that we can have discussion about them in this format. The whole idea of these discussions is to give you feedback and ideas and help you through that process. So don't think you have to do it all on your own. I obviously can't give you everything. I can't assist you in every way about doing them, but I can certainly give you assistance with ideas and how to improve them and how to extend what you're thinking about doing. Now obviously you've had plenty of ideas from the readings, and all the activities do have some basis in the readings and the material we've gone through in previous weeks. Okay.
Just with a lot of them have like narrated screen recordings and that sort of thing.
Yes.
How do I know how to do the screen recording with QuickTime, but I'm not sure how I'm meant to tape my audio or something like that.
Well, if you're doing a screen recording and you've got your microphone plugged in, you can speak directly to it and it will automatically record. Yes.
At the same time that it's doing the screen?
At the same time.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
So that's how I do all of your, all my video presentations for you. So it just happens an automatic process.
Okay.
Whatever's being recorded on the screen, it also records the audio that's happening.
Okay. So I should go to a quiet place while I'm doing that.
Yes, that would help.
Okay.
But just to test it, do a really short one and just make sure it occurs. But yeah, you should find that that's no problem.
Okay. Cool.
So Jason, have you had any thoughts about which of the activities you might do for your second assignment?
Well, there's lots to choose from, that's for sure.
There are, and remember, it's only 2.
Again. Yeah, so I'll make my decision pretty soon, that's for sure.
Okay. So it'd be good if everyone can actually start making those choices so we can have that discussion and I can help you through those assignments. Because yeah, the idea of this is you don't have to do it all on your own. You can if you wish, of course. That's the nature of this course. You've got options to be able to work independently. But we also have this group format so that we can actually do things in a more collaborative way. So for those watching online, do you have any ideas for yourselves as to which of the options you're going to do for your second assignment? Well, it's good to see a few more of you here this week. Now, hopefully we'll have more of you joining the panels over the next few weeks as we start talking about these assignments in more detail, because it's a great way of actually going through. And as you know, with Google Hangouts, you could share your screen if you wished, and you could show me what you're doing, and we can work through your ideas. It does mean you have to be a bit confident in showcasing what you're doing, but that's the whole idea of formative assessment, is that you do have to showcase how you're going so that you can get feedback and improve upon it.
A few of us have been, while some of us have been at uni, others have been like at home, and we've still been meeting and like using the Scoot and Doodle so we could show what we're meaning and stuff in the screen share and whatnot.
Wonderful.
Definitely. It's one course that I've actually used across the board for other subjects and that stuff as well.
Well, that's the whole idea of ICT,
Yeah.
and that's why it's actually in your first year program. In fact, we're even thinking about changing our primary program now that we've seen how you guys have worked with things to incorporate this course back into the primary program. We were going to put it into fourth year, but we're now considering putting it back into first or second year so that you've got more experience with these technologies and can use it in your other courses.
Yeah.
Okay, so Maria's thinking about doing the QR codes. That's a good one. And Kara's thinking about doing the tutorial. Yep, both great ones to think about. So do some thinking about those over the next week or so we can actually discuss them in more detail about how you're thinking about approaching those. There are criteria associated with them. That it's really about how you decide to use them and how effective that they would then be in an educational setting, and that's where I can give you advice and examples and suggestions. Okay, well, is there anything else? So we've gone through the content fairly quickly, mostly because some of you haven't looked at it yet in great detail, but that's okay. It's there for you to have a look at, and we've done the real heavy content for the course now. We will have a bit of content for each week as we go along, but most of the detailed readings we've already done, so you won't be getting any big chunks of reading to do anymore. That we do early in the course, so you can have that so you can work on for your assessment. It's always a balancing act in a course in terms of how much to give really early on, so we don't overwhelm you, but that we give you enough that you can then work on for your assessment. Of course, it's really horrible when you're still doing lots and lots of content and learning about things and being assessed on it as you have to do them for your assessment tasks. You're lucky in this case we've got a reasonably long period of time for your course. Some of our courses are much shorter and we have to compress the assessment in very early so that you've got time to go out on the prac. So does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask about anything to do with the course or the assessment or any other areas?
Just with the assessment,
Yep.
the tutorial one, because I was thinking of doing that one as well. Are you allowed to have like somebody else in your video to kind of help explain things or that sort of thing? I'm not sure what I'm trying to say.
Let me just get through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so prepare a short online instructional video for teacher professional development on a topic related to your course. Okay, now you could do that with another person, or you could even do it for a student. But, well, say if in this case it is for professional development, you could have someone else taking on the role of a teacher and you explaining it to them and do it that way. Probably you would also need to have you could do that as part of it and then jump to some screen recordings as you go through, or if that's the nature of the topic you're doing. But if it's a more practical applied one, say QR codes that you're explaining, you might just have video of them engaging with that as a technology and doing it that way. Absolutely, yes. You can use other people as props.
Okay.
As long as you're doing part of the, well, no, even still, as long as it's a good, effective tutorial program and you've had a role in the production of it, you don't need to be the only one. Like I've seen very effective ones done where people have got their children in to be the participants in the video. But you're making the tutorial, so how you make that is up to you.
All right.
Have a look at the criteria for it. So what have we got? You should aim to interpret an educational concept related to this course and present this as a narrated instructional video that incorporates screen recording. So yes, so it has to incorporate narration, has to incorporate screen recording. Need to explain the concept, and for higher standards, you need to show some insight into the use of instructional video for education. So there, I would expect that you've actually gone and had a look at some best practices around instructional video. And for that one, we're looking at high quality instructional video. There is an argument that low quality instructional video, such as what we're doing here, is very effective as well, because sometimes really polished instructional videos can be off-putting, particularly when you're doing it with teachers, because they don't then feel that they're confident enough to be able to do it themselves in terms of what you're teaching them about. But low-quality instructional video can sometimes actually make it easier for people to learn, because they're seeing the mistakes and sort of the messiness of the learning happening, similar to what we do in a classroom, where really high-quality, say with actors doing a really high-quality performance instructional video, can sometimes be very abstracting and difficult for people to conceptualize themselves in that learning situation. But that said, for your video, you do need to make it of a fairly high quality, because that's part of what we need to assess for that. So look at how instructional videos have been made. The TED Talks are good examples of really high quality ones, but there's literally tens of thousands, if not millions, of instructional videos now available on YouTube.
I've used a few from YouTube when I've been trying to do stuff. So even trying to use the QuickTime, I wasn't entirely sure how to use that, so I just Googled how to turn on recording on QuickTime, and YouTube helped me.
Absolutely. And it's, again, it's another way people are now learning that for many teachers it's very foreign. They don't understand that students today, if they've got a problem to solve, they'll go to YouTube. Before often they'll even try to Google it, and they'll find a YouTube clip that explains it as a source of information on how to do something. And it's something that's become very, very prevalent for our student use, but we see very few teachers making use of that for teaching at the moment. And part of this is to try to get you into that mindset of making little video clips for your own classes, or at least allowing your students, and have the expectations that your students will go away, and if they've got a problem, they don't understand quantum physics or how to multiply numbers, negative numbers, they'll often go and look for a video clip on how to explain that before they'll even think to ask their teacher how to do something. So any other questions or comments about anything?
Just one more through the tutorial one. Can we use like Google Hangouts to do that tutorial, like say with somebody else? Like, and use the screen sharing and that sort of thing?
You could do it that way, although I'd probably hope you would still maybe do some editing of it to polish it up. But certainly, if you practiced it enough and did it as one take, or enough takes it and then edit it together, it could be used as an effective instructional tool. Any other questions, comments, queries? Kara's got one. Can you do a Google Hangout together, both doing a tutorial on a topic and share screens and sharing ideas, and then it would be doubled to 14 minutes? Interesting idea, Kara. At this stage, I'll say no. I really like innovation and I like new approaches, but I don't want you to complicate the task too much by trying to do that. You can certainly help each other and do two separate videos where you're a participant in someone else's video and you're the participant in their video. But trying to combine two tutorials on two topics into one video is making the task more complicated than it needs to be. But you can certainly do two separate ones. if you're thinking about doing the Google Hangouts one, didn't I have one about doing a Google Hangouts? Or was that just for assignment 1?
That was assignment 1, I think.
Yes, okay. So maybe it's... Yeah, no, you would have to do it. But for your video, for a tutorial video, you do need to polish it up a bit. So it does need to show some evidence of editing and making it as effective as it can be for a tutorial video.
Just going back to the Google Hangout for assessment 1.
Yep.
A group of us, I think there was like 9 or 10 of us, we did one and we've submitted it, but we've just realized that I think 1 or 2 people didn't actually get a chance to use a couple of apps. Do we have to redo that, or will we lose marks because like 1 or 2 people didn't do that?
Which apps did you use?
I think we used the augmented reality ones. I think we also took like some pictures, and I think we used chat as well, but I can't remember the other one we used.
Okay, it'd be fine for those that used the apps, but if someone was involved in the Hangout and didn't use any of the apps themselves at all, they probably wouldn't be able to have it count for their submission. Or if they did, they wouldn't be able to tick that use of the apps element. It'd be fine for everyone else. It wouldn't negate their use. But for them to count that, they would have to have used an app at some stage during the Hangout. It's fairly hard not to use any of the apps unless they were using a iPad device or something like that.
Yeah, she had the computer shut down on her halfway through, and so yeah, it was just technical difficulties really.
Yeah, so she probably wouldn't be able to have that count as one of her activities, or at least not. She could count it for 4/5 of the activity, but wouldn't be able to count that final point.
Okay.
But she might just choose one of the other activities. Like, there's plenty of assignment 1 activities that are fairly easy to do. Okay then, well, if there's no other questions or things I can help anyone with, we might call this to a close a bit early. Going. Okay, well, we'll finish up and let everyone get back to doing your assignments.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.